We have learned new details about a state investigation into a child care center in Falmouth. Last year, we told you how investigators from Maine's Department of Health and Human Services found that the owner of Apple Blossom Child Care violated licensing rules when she gave children melatonin gummies at nap time without parents' permission. In some states, that's a criminal offense. In Maine, it is not. Since then, Maine DHHS has made more details public on its website, childcarechoices.me. That site is meant to help families make informed decisions by posting inspection reports and violations for licensed childcares. But in this case, key findings were kept from public view for more than a year because of an appeal. DHHS staff say this policy protects due process, but parents I spoke to say this process is broken and they want to fix it.
I feel like we were kept in the dark, intentionally or not.
These two moms are shining a light on what happened, not just to their kids, but how the state handled it.
Trying to keep kids safe in real time was absolutely failed.
State records show in December 2024, investigators from Maine's Department of Health and Human Services found the owner of Apple Blossom Child Care in Falmouth gave at least 2 children melatonin gummies at nap time without telling their parents. Melatonin is an over-the-counter supplement that helps many people fall asleep.
We have to live with that the rest of our lives.
Laura Putnam's son was one of those kids.
We put them in the care of someone who broke our trust. As a parent, that is the worst feeling in the world.
At the time, the state sent these letters to Putnam and another parent saying their children were considered victims of abuse or neglect, a finding investigators later reversed. State investigators say the owner violated licensing rules, not because she gave children melatonin, but because she did so without getting parents' written consent. For the violation, the state issued Apple Blossom's owner these 2 documents, a conditional license and a directed plan of action. In those documents, DHHS staff wrote the owner failed to show mature judgment and compassionate regard for the best interests of children. They also explained what corrections she needed to make to avoid losing her license completely. But the owner appealed that decision, triggering a DHHS policy that keeps those documents off the state's public website during the appeal. For more than a year, those findings were not available to the public, meaning parents had no way to see them.
Because what would have been posted would have been those monitoring visit reports.
The monthly ones.
We sat down with Bobby Johnson, the director of DHHS's Office of Child and Family Services.
Do you have kids?
I do.
Did they go to childcare?
They did.
Is that information that you would have wanted to know for your children before you sent them somewhere?
Yeah, I think, I would, as many parents do, want to do my due diligence to ensure that my children are going to a safe program. And I think that the department has rules and procedures in place to ensure that to the best of our ability for children and to share as much information as we're able to share through the laws and rules that we need to follow.
During the appeal, records show state investigators overturned their own findings. DHHS says a second review determined the case did not meet the legal threshold for abuse or neglect.
I am not discounting that these children were impacted and that the concern that the parents have. I think for me, in looking at it through the lens of the investigation and the rule violations, it really is about whether it meets that legal threshold for child abuse or neglect.
I still don't understand the different ways in which DHHS categorizes abuse and neglect of children in a daycare setting. That's how confusing it is.
The state granted the owner 2 continuances, postponements of her appeal hearing. Nearly 1 year after filing her appeal, the owner dropped it. Only then did staff post those documents on Child Care Choices. A year and a half since the investigation began, and with just 1 month left on the owner's conditional license. Apple Blossom received its full license again in January 2026, 1 month after dropping the appeal.
Yeah.
That does not sit well with Stephanie Whitman, whose daughter also attended Apple Blossom during the incident.
I don't think 476 days and 11 months of a hidden conditional license is transparency.
That is one of the challenges with the system, is the timeliness.
That seems like another way that would be difficult for parents to know what a child care provider might be being reviewed for.
Correct.
Do you feel that process needs to change?
I think it's definitely something worth looking at. If someone is issued a conditional license and they don't appeal, then that goes on Child Care Choices, and the provider is required to post that as well. And so the appeals process is what seems to have impacted the availability of this information and the transparency to families in this situation.
But it worries me that if we hadn't kept pushing, that these documents still wouldn't be available. Because it's not in the date.
Putnam says the law does not go far enough to protect kids.
This happened. They're saying it happened. And this daycare is still fully licensed and fully operational. The standard of care is not high enough.
So 3 last notes. First, the owner declined to do any interview with us, but she did send us a written statement saying, quote, Apple Blossom has earned and enjoyed an impeccable reputation for years, which has been and always will be based on conscientious care and a love of helping children unlock their unique potential, end quote. Second, these moms say they are now fighting for legislative change. They want someone giving kids melatonin without permission at a daycare to be a criminal offense. They say they're looking for a legislator to help take this on. Lastly, Bobby Johnson told me a tip for parents looking at child care choices. She said if you see a child care with monthly inspection reports for a year, like Apple Blossom had, that should be a cue to ask more questions.